The latest news, national issues, the political scene, and conversations with prominent personalities. All these firsthand at the forefront. Good morning. I am Attorney Karen Jimeno. Following the pronouncement of President Bongbong Marcos last Monday that he would veto the anti-teen pregnancy bill if it reaches him in its current form, 5 senators have withdrawn support to the proposed legislation led by Senator Risa Ontiveros. Senate Bill 1979, or the Prevention of Adolescent Pregnancy Act of 2023, mandates that comprehensive sex education should be integrated into the school curriculum, guided by the Department of Education and in accordance to international standards. Senators JV Ejercito, Jinggoy Estrada, Cynthia Villar, Nancy Binay, and Bong Go have withdrawn their signatures on the bill and expressed apprehension on the provisions that allegedly promote bodily pleasure and sexual rights to children. Should the proposed legislation be amended, or should it go straight to the gutter? Live at the BNC studio is human rights lawyer and professional debate coach, Attorney Jesus Falcis. Good morning, Attorney Jess.
Good day, Attorney Karen.
So first, let's talk about the Senate Bill 1979. And can you tell us briefly what this is all about?
Oh, well, the Senate Bill 1979 of Senator Risa is not a new bill. So she has filed it before, and in all of its iterations, in all of its versions, it talks about preventing primarily teenage pregnancy, because in the Philippines, we have an alarming rate of teenage pregnancy. Teenage pregnancies...
What is that rate? Would you remember?
I can't forget, I forget the percentage, but in terms of absolute numbers, we have around 55,000 teenage pregnant, young teenage mothers already at 10 to 15 years old.
10
to 15 years old.
Really
Not just
alarming.
like minors na 17 or 16, but 10 to 15. And this was in 2020 or a 2021 statistic. So I'm not updated on the most recent, but it's on the uptick. So it's not decreasing, it's increasing. And this is a problem because women, when they get pregnant very young, a lot of opportunities are deprived of them. They become young mothers. They have to focus on their kids, obviously. And in the Philippines, where abortion is banned, they really have to focus on taking care of their children. And then, aside from that, in terms of education opportunities, in terms of social dynamics, social relationships, there are stigmas. And obviously, they were probably exploited or abused.
Yeah,
or,
the super young
yes,
pregnancies.
The reason why they got pregnant at such an early age, because if they were not abused or naisahan, or yung parang ginulang, they wouldn't have gotten pregnant at such a young age. May nanloko na lalaki.
So when you say nanloko, there's consent, but it's not informed consent,
it's
or
not
as you say, like
consent.
there's some manipulation there. But hindi naman to yung mga, this is even apart from yung sexual abuse victims.
There are rape cases as well, but there are a lot of just uninformed or misinformed cases.
So going back to Senate Bill 1979, what makes this bill unique in terms of addressing that problem of adolescent pregnancies?
Well, we don't have a law that specifically focuses on addressing a teenage pregnancy. It's something that is a reality, something that is actually like an epidemic that is happening so much, but there is not much national focus or attention given to this problem. So what the bill aims to do is to have that comprehensive sexuality education, which is what is controversial for some conservatives. I'm not saying all, because there are actually some conservatives who support the bill because they also want to prevent teenage pregnancy. But there is this faction of conservatives who seem to misinterpret what CSE, Comprehensive Sexuality Education, means. And that's what the bill primarily aims to promote in equipping young women teenagers, our daughters, the daughters of the Filipino people, to have that kind of informed consent, that they will not be manipulated, gaslighted to think that sex is good, sex is pleasurable, let's have sex at an early age, that they will consent to such an act right away. And they will know what to do if ever it happens to them. The bill also equips them to deal with the problem of teenage pregnancy.
Well, Attorney Jess, one of the controversial statements made even by President Bongbong Marcos in relation to the bill is that it will teach controversial acts like masturbation, for
Yes.
example, to young children.
Allegedly.
I read the full version of the Senate bill in its current form. I didn't see that, at least that part on masturbation. But where did that come from? Where is that supposed danger that it will be taught to kids?
So first of all, let's note that it's absolutely fake news. And it's disgusting a bit. It's a bit disgusting to hear that from prominent intellectuals to say that there is early age masturbation that will be taught at 0 to 4 years old. Nothing in the bill, in this version and its previous version, does that. First. Second, we also have to note that actually we already teach CSE, even if it's not yet in the law.
Child sex education.
Comprehensive sexuality
yes,
education, because that is already incorporated in some Department of Education guidelines or memorandums. And Secretary Sani Angara has clarified this, that since 2018, the DepEd has already incorporated the concept of comprehensive sexuality education. And he also said, Secretary Sani Angara, PBBM's own appointee, said that nothing in the CSE of DepEd teaches or forces the state or DepEd to teach such a concept at a very young age. Now,
So,
the third
saan
note,
nanggaling
where does
yun?
it come from?
Yeah,
No? Kasi syempre, alam mo naman mga fact-checkers, parang grabe, nakakaano pakinggan. 0 to 4 years old, tuturuan mo ng masturbation. So, comprehensive sexuality education is a concept that comes from the United Nations, from UNESCO, from the World Health Organization. It's a scientific concept, database, scientifically investigated, scientifically backed. So, in Europe and in some countries, there are documented cases. I'm not saying it's being taught. There are documented cases where there are children at a very early age who already masturbate.
Okay.
0 to 4 years old. And then their parents are not equipped when they see their kid, 0 to 4, touching themselves, masturbating themselves. They're not equipped. They feel stigma. They're not sure, it's awkward. They're not sure why their kid is doing that. So they approach doctors. So the doctors, the sociologists, the psychologists, social workers, they are able to document these cases. These are not majority of cases. These are very small minority. And so in the CSE curriculum or in the CSE, because it's comprehensive, it tackles all cases of sexuality. So in that kind of policy outline, specifically dealing with that, they were able to prescribe or suggest intervention strategies.
Okay, but it's not part of the regular curriculum.
It's not part of the regular curriculum. It's part of the menu. It's a menu of options. If this happens to your kid, or if you encounter this situation, you're an educator, or you're a social worker, in Europe, you're taught, these are the intervention strategies for
Okay.
0 to 4 years old.
So for parents, I'm also a parent. So I have a young child. So this is something that also concerns me. So if this bill gets passed, is there any concern for parents that there would be non-appropriate content that can be taught to children?
So that example in Europe has not been documented, I think, in the Philippines. And if ever it does happen in the Philippines, what happens in the Philippines is it won't be taught to the general public.
Oh, and hindi siya sa classroom ituturo.
In the classrooms, it's more like a
parents that can
parent
ask.
intervention with the teachers, and then the parents will get to be able to ask, so what do we do with this situation? How do we help our kid? Because it's your problem, you have children, people have children, it's a problem. The problem of the Philippines, do you know that the Philippines is the #1, sometimes #2, consumer of Pornhub And that's a problem.
Has there been any research on why that is the case? Is it because we're a repressed culture, or meron bang data that drives this to find the rational?
I can't give the explanation why we're the number one consumer. But the point of that data, that factoid, is that because we're the number one consumer of porn, it includes a lot of our teenagers. It includes a lot of our minors who can access the internet. It's not really blocked. There's no access.
So it might be an issue also of parents being able to guide the children or restrict access to certain sites.
To pornography. And the issue with pornography, which is tackled by Senator Risa's bill, it also tackles misconceptions about our bodies because we get a distorted view because of pornography. In pornography, for hetero pornography and even for homosexual pornography, there are a lot of stereotypes. There are a lot of things that you thought, oh, this is how sex is, but that's very glorified in porn. It's a pornographized way of presenting sex. So when our young kids consume that, and it might be our fault because we were not able to stop them or regulate them, or the internet is very free. But since we're the number one consumer of porn, adults and young people in the Philippines alike, we get a distorted view of sex, and that's a problem. That's something that we need to address with comprehensive sexuality education, which will teach people about their bodies, not to think that, oh, you need to be thin to have sex, you need to do this position, to have pleasurable sex, you need to be like this, which is what porn does. Because it's a very idealized
But Attorney Jess, earlier
situation.
You mentioned that CSE, or comprehensive sex education, is already included or being taught in schools. So how is that different from what this bill proposes, at least what we currently have? Because I do remember in school, even in elementary education, they teach the reproductive system. So there is some basic education, but what makes this type of curriculum different if this bill goes through?
Well, the CSE that we have right now being integrated by DepEd is sourced from the RH law, which was also a contentious law between conservatives and advocates, and anti-HIV or anti-AIDS law, right? So it talks about reproductive systems, it talks about the stigma against HIV. But there's a lack of focus on teenage pregnancy. So the RH law, because it was a more generic law, which was just to promote reproductive health of women, maternity, your gynecological needs, the needs of women and their bodies, it doesn't really specifically say there that sex education needs to be comprehensive. And what is the definition of comprehensive sex education under Senator Risa's bill? It says it must be complete, medically accurate, relevant, and age-appropriate or development-appropriate. So
Yeah.
4 things.
So I think the contentious part there would be the age appropriateness, because when you talk about comprehensive, it can talk about sexuality, sexual preferences, and for parents, I guess that would be the concern, like, what are you teaching my child? So who determines the age appropriateness?
Well, for age-appropriate, it should definitely be science-based or database. And I trust Secretary Sani Angara. I trust a lot of the bureaucrats in government who are more experts than us normal lawyers. They have backgrounds in sociology, in psychology, in a lot of these other disciplines. They're the ones who are equipped to do that. So I don't want to necessarily question them. Parents should be able to trust our educators, especially our policymakers, that they know what they're doing. When they say age appropriate, I'm surprised that it's already controversial, because the word age appropriate itself should assure people that we will only teach something that is appropriate to a 5-year-old is different from something that is appropriate to a 10-year-old versus something that is appropriate to a 15-year-old. And again, Senator Risa's bill, which she has already amended anyway, she has already substituted it, is focusing more on the 10 to 15 age bracket. Because those are the people or youth susceptible to being fooled about having sex,
But I did
about their
notice that
bodies.
in the Senate Bill 1979, the definition of adolescence is ages 10 to 19.
10 to 19.
When under the law, currently 19 would no longer be a minor. It would be considered legally an adult. So would that mean that 19 in this case would also be considered as susceptible to misconceptions?
I think the reason why 19 is included there is because a lot of sex with teenagers happens in high school or in senior high, leading up to college. So 19 is captured there because when you're 17 or 18 and you get pregnant,
Yeah.
then you deliver at 19.
Yes.
So
that
the
makes sense.
interventions should happen around 10 to 19. And
Okay.
that's what's crucial. That's what differentiates this bill from the RH law, from the anti-HIV law, from the current sex education of the Department of Education.
And Attorney Jess, how would this affect other laws? For example, I saw provisions there that said that should you become pregnant as an adolescent, that you would be entitled to coverage for SSS, for example. And you can get additional assistance, medical assistance, apart from the psychological support. So would that mean that even if you don't have a job, you can get SSS coverage? And how would the contributions work out? I know I'm asking you too much because this is only the bill.
Yeah.
I was just curious. I mean, as a lawyer, perhaps I can pick your brain
I'm not
on
sure
that.
on the details of that, but because you asked a while ago what's the difference of this bill. So the title of this bill is Teenage Prevention Act or Anti-Teen Pregnancy. So it's not really about sex education per se. So what you said is what is unique with this bill that differentiates it from other laws, which is that a lot of the interventions and social benefits or protections are aimed at helping teenage moms. Because I'm sure conservatives would agree we wouldn't want them to abort because abortion is illegal and abortion is immoral in the Philippines, right? So if they carry that to term, what do we help them with? So one of that is giving them SSS benefits. I'm just not sure how Senator Rizal's plan would make that work out.
Oo, kasi saan kukunin naman yung funds for
funds.
SSS if you give that coverage
Especially
to someone who doesn't contribute?
Especially if our lawmakers delete portions of the budget for PhilHealth or for SSS.
That's true. Oo nga. So they have to figure this out. But one thing that I'm also curious about, so there is a portion where children or minors ages 16 to 19, so I guess there's an exception then on the 19-year-old, can get access to social and reproductive health information and services. So, of course, we don't have the implementing rules and regulations yet, so we don't really know what those types of services would be. But should they want access to that type of information, that's okay. But if you are below 15, you need the consent of your parents or legal guardian. And in the absence of that, you would be able to get the consent from a social worker, a doctor, or a Department of Health accredited medical professional. So I guess a concern of parents here would be the substitution of the consent if they are unable to give it or if they refuse to give it. So what is your take on that?
I think that is what is legitimately controversial. So let's absolutely remove the other more controversial, which is not controversial because nowhere in the bill talks about masturbation. This is, I would say, is legitimately controversial because the reason why there needs to be substituted consent, and even for some advocates, we actually want to remove parental consent. No offense to most parents, right? They would say, why are you removing us from the equation? They're still our kids, right? But imagine this. Once a young girl gets knocked up, gets pregnant at 15 to 16, 17, 18, aren't they already in some way emancipated? They're already taking care of someone else. They will already they are already tasked to take care of another life. So if their parents are the ones that make decisions for them, they're not truly in a position to make decisions for themselves and for their future kid, right? They still need to get the consent from their parent. For me, it doesn't make sense. Second, the reality is, unfortunately, even if parents object to this, unfortunately, a lot of parents don't really agree to some of the medical interventions that their young teenage daughter needs because they experience stigma and shame. The parents themselves, right? Oh, our kid got pregnant at an early age. Is she promiscuous? Is she a slut? Things like that can come to the mind of the parent, right? And they would think that if the young girl, their teenage daughter, wants access to condoms, wants access to intrauterine devices, or other RH needs, they will object on the basis maybe of their religion or their ethics. But for the young teenage daughter, they want that because they already want to avoid probably a second pregnancy. But they're not allowed without the consent of the parents. So this is, I can see this as a legitimately controversial issue because to what extent should parents have adults a right to decide the life of their teenage kid who already has a baby?
No, but kung wala pa, because in this law, or in this bill, it says that it's access to sexual and reproductive health information and services. So imagine if you have a child below 15 years old who's on their own trying to get information to that, and you refuse to give your consent, the bill will say that
the social worker or the doctor.
You can get that consent from a social worker or a doctor or a DOH accredited medical professional. So it's kind of substituting that judgment call of the parents.
And the parental authority is negated. So my answer to that is that, again, unfortunately, a lot of parents might think that they know better than their kids. But if their kids are already exposed, so if parents really want to be involved in the lives of their kids, they should really be involved, because otherwise, most kids, teenagers, would get their sources of information from their peers.
Or social media. I know that I have a friend who's a mom, and she was saying, my goodness, I observe my daughters and they really use TikTok as their Google. Like, they basically research everything.
They don't
on
Google
TikTok.
anymore.
Yeah, they just use
TikTok. They search on TikTok.
Yeah. So, in that case, would you say that this might be okay? I mean, as lawyers, we know that this can be a constitutional issue if it's deemed to be something that encroaches upon the ability of parents to exercise their parental authority.
Well, the reason why I think there's still a primacy for the minor there, so I'm on the side of the minor, it's because, again, it's their life that is at stake. If they get pregnant, if they get fooled, it's their life that is at stake, right? Yeah. Now, you might ask, why would they get fooled if their parents want to be involved? Well, unfortunately, a lot of parents are busy. This is for our social strata. What about the different social strata who have, the TikTok situation is our situation, but unfortunately, a lot of parents as well are not really involved in the lives of our kids or teenage daughters. They're busy working. They're busy finding food. They're busy with a lot of other things. And so they're not able to, and many Filipinos are awkward to talk about sex.
Yeah,
to talk
that's
about,
true. Yeah.
So if parents don't consent, where will the kid get the information anyway? If their own parents don't teach it, and then they can't access it from the social worker or from the doctor, where will they get it from? From their friends, from their boyfriend, who might say, and this is the clear case, Karen, Attorney Karen, the boyfriend might say, you know, sex is only pleasurable. There's no pain to it. But we know some sex is painful, or pleasure or pain can come with pleasure. Right? But a lot of girls hear their other friends, oh, you know, it was so good. They won't say it's painful, especially the first time around. The guys as well will say, yeah, let's do it. Do you love me? If you love me, let's do it. It's a sign of love. There's no pain to it. There's no problem. Right? They can get fooled. Because if their parents don't talk to them about sex, about the first time, about the second time, about the third time, who's gonna tell them? So that's why if minors want to have access to information, why can an adult, even if it's their parents, stop them from getting information? I'll add the last note here, Attorney Karen. We have a Supreme Court decision, and this was a case of mine. I helped with some minors. It's called Spark versus Quezon City. Samahan ng mga kabataan versus Quezon City. In that Supreme Court case, for the first time, the Supreme Court said minors have human rights. Minors have constitutional rights, even if they're minors. So what am I saying here? Even if they're minors, it doesn't mean they have less rights than us adults. They still have the right to information. They should still have the right to privacy. They should still have the right to choice. And it's their future that they're charting. So why should we stop them with accessing information that would help them chart a better life for them?
Okay, and do you think there would be concerns on just the level of when we say appropriateness, like the level of information that will be taught to children where parents have no visibility? So to what extent would parents be able to have access to what is being taught in school? I know that that's not part of what the bill says, but in terms of implementation, how will that comfort the parents that, that they would at least be aware of what's being taught to the children?
Well, for rich parents, they will be able to access the curriculum. Most private schools have curriculums. Their teachers will print out an outline. Their teachers will print out the concepts taught under that curriculum. So all the parents need to do is just approach the school and ask for a copy of the curriculum. And maybe some of the PTA, the Parent-Teacher Association, some of them sit in. That's for the rich parents. For those who are not in private school, those who are in public school, again, I trust Secretary Sani Angara, and there are a lot of competent civil servants there. I will be shell-shocked if it's not age-appropriate in our public schools.
And another thing I think, Attorney Jess, that would concern parents, there is what people call now the woke culture. And in the United States, it's also controversial that some states have allowed minors to decide when to get a sex change or to change their gender. And here I know that this is one of the concerns for parents. Will they be teaching minors to choose their sexual preference at a young age? Well, we're about the same age. We grew up with parents who, are very strict when it comes to, nung panahon natin,
Yes.
grabe pa yung stigma with
LGBT.
having other genders. It was only male, female. Ngayon lang naman yung mga LGBTQ, ngayon meron pang AI. And I saw that in the bill as well. They used the word LGBTQ AI. So, IA. So, all of these genders that, of course, a lot of people are still concerned about, especially conservatives, wherein there should be only two genders. So what would be the assurance
And
to
Trump
parents?
declared a two-gender policy.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say that. When he had
the
his
United
speech in the
States.
inauguration this week, that's also what he said, that from now on, we're just going to have two genders. So for parents who are conservatives, how would they be assuaged that children will not be taught to change their gender at a very young age?
So
Is that even part of comprehensive sex education?
I don't think CSE is teaching anyone to change. It just informs, which is that it just says there's this spectrum of sexuality, spectrum of sex. So I have to digress here a bit, right? So there's a lot of moral panic about trans people, about transgenders. There's a lot of moral panic as well about gay people and lesbian people. Even though the Philippines say it's a very welcoming country for people like me who are gay, right? There are still sectors of society who think it's immoral, who think it's unnatural, who think it's an abhorrent thing that should be eliminated, right? There's still some portion of society. But I have to say, we have to follow the science. The science says that sex, even though people think it's traditionally male and female, is that actually it's a spectrum. Some people are more male than others, and some are just normal males. Some people are more female. This is about hormones. This is about sex organs. This is about the body. And bodies are different. It's a spectrum. There is no single box that says you're a man, because what makes a man? It's more fluid than more people think. But it's a long discussion. What I'll just state here is there are a lot of gay people, a lot of trans people who are young and who are told that who they are is wrong and who they are is invalid. And they commit suicide. They get depressed. They are isolated or shunned by their families or some of their families. And then later, they will grow up in life being less of the person that they could have been, or they would have killed themselves. This happens in the Philippines. This happens in other countries. So, to have this panic about sex education, forcing kids to be gay or lesbian or trans, against their parents' wishes, that's not something that sex education will do. That is something that, first of all, is actually already happening, but in the reverse, which is some parents suppressing who their kid wants to be and actually is. Like, they're already gay. You can see that they're flamboyant, you can see that they look at boys, and the parents, because of stigma and shame, maybe, and that's the reality, I commiserate with them, but they will suppress their kid. So it happens in the reverse. It's not sex education that's forcing kids to change their preferences or their gender.
Okay. But that's not the coverage.
That's not the coverage. So this is a different debate altogether.
Yeah.
I might be accused of contributing to the to the moral panic.
Yeah, but again, this is not part of the standard comprehensive sex
CSE
education.
only covers the fact that it will say there are gay people, there are lesbian people, and it's fine to be gay or lesbian. That's all it's going to say. It's not going to tell the child, oh, are you gay? Yes, you're gay. You're lesbian. Oh, you should be lesbian. You should be trans. There's nothing of that sort.
Or you should change your gender or have
Nothing of that sort. It will be still the person's choice. Information can only equip the person with information. What they do with that information is still up to them.
And this bill was passed unanimously by Congress with 232 votes, 0 negative votes, and 0 abstention. It stalled in the period of interpellation since August 2024 and never discussed again at the time. Should senators raising their concern do it on the floor instead of raising their concerns through media? But before you answer that question, we'll have to take a short break. At the Forefront, we'll be right back.
Good evening, I'm Pinky Webb.
The questions.
What would you attribute this milestone?
We attribute this to is, of course, the dedication and hard work of our officials.
The issues.
Has there been any change from this year?
Nearing to 2022 elections, this is actually lower to that election as compared to the present.
We clarify matters.
Is this a normal drop that we see?
It's normal to have declines in both trust and performance.
Pinky Webb is always on point.
Good morning, I'm Mikey Oreta.
Ferdy Salvador,
Welcome to Industry Beacon,
where we shine a light on the trailblazers.
the disruptors and the industry leaders shaping our future,
And in each episode, we explore how they're staying ahead in their fields.
one industry at a time.
It's a good opportunity to come from Australia here to the Philippines.
AC Health has launched groundbreaking initiatives to improve access to care.
I'm so thrilled we opened the country's first cancer-only hospital.
Industry Beacon on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel. Lifestyle, beauty, food. We got you.
If you want a gift that gives back, memories that is, this one is on my wish list too.
Join Marie Lozano where she uncovers the untold stories and surprises in the world of lifestyle.
I had already accepted my excess baggage fate. It's time to show me what you're really about.
The Lifestyle Lab on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.
Welcome back at the Forefront. Attorney Jess, Senate Bill 1979 was passed unanimously by Congress with 232 votes, 0 negative votes, and 0 abstention. It stalled in the period of interpellation since August 2024 and was never discussed. Should senators raising their concerns do it on the floor instead of raising their concerns on social media?
Yes, they should definitely do it on the floor para masayahan tayo like si Quadcom. Mapanood natin yung mga senators na magpagalingan sa interpolation, di ba? Because this is not something that they can say it has this or that, kaya lang wag nating ipasa. Madaming fake news. Si PBBM, di ba, he was a victim of fake news because fake news yung budget na may mga blanco daw. Unfortunately, sana si President and the senators who withdrew their signatures get to read the entire bill. I had it printed pa nga, di ba? There's nothing in the bill. There's no masturbation here. There's no 0 to 4. It says a lot about religious sensitivity. It says a lot about cultural sensitivity. It says na kailangan i-swakto natin siya sa Philippine context. So hindi siya basta-basta ituturo na pabalang.
Do you think President Bongbong Marcos then was ill-informed by someone that masturbation appeared in the bill?
Kasi Attorney Karen, nung New Year, nagkalat sa Viber ng mga titas of Manila at saka ng mga religious. Itong video na naging moral panic and alarmist.
What video?
May video kasi ang pinaka-proponent nitong fake news na to, and unfortunately I have to call them out, si Project Dalisay. And a vocal spokesperson for them is now then former Chief Justice Sereno. So sinabi niya, it's clear daw in the bill na merong sinasabi 0 to 4 years old, tuturuan ng child masturbation. Sabi niya na nasa bill. So tiningnan ng mga fact-checkers. Kasi actually hindi naman to balita nun because we all thought it was just a normal sex education bill. It was just a normal anti-teenage pregnancy bill. So meron daw ganung alarming. So syempre chinek ng mga fact-checkers, the current version, the previous version, all of the versions, none of it contains that kind of clause. So I'm absolutely dumbfounded why they made that video, and that video, because it was very alarmist, circulated. So baka yun yung nakaabot kay PBBM. Sabi naman ni PBBM, if the bill, so I think he was hedging. Hindi pa niya yata nabasa yung buong bill. Basahin na lang ni PBBM yung buong bill, si Secretary Sani Angara, sabi nga din, wala naman problema sa DepEd, 2018 pa naka-incorporate ang CSE. So, I hope he gets to talk to Secretary Sani Angara. Isa sa mga idol kong senator, Senator Nancy Binay, nag-withdraw ng signature. Sana mabasa naman ni Madam ang bill because wala doon. Wala yung masturbation. Nothing at all.
So, like now, how do you think people could get the right information about this bill? Because as lawyers for us, it's about 25 pages. It's something that we can read based on our training as lawyers. But for people na hindi naman abogado, tatamarin talaga sila basahin. And sa definition
Madali
of
na
terms
lang.
palang tatamarin na sila.
Madali na lang, Attorney Karen, nagko-control. Ganito lang yan, Google, go to the Senate website, Senate Bill 1979, look for Senator Risa, download, click. So sabi mo, 25 pages, may Control F naman. What is Control F? Control F, hanapin mo yung word na masturbation.
Para makita mo na wala
Tapos
talaga.
sasabihin ng Google, sasabihin ng word file, zero results. Walang masturbation.
Okay. And right now, let's talk about the psychological aspect. So to provide insights from a psychological perspective, joining us via Zoom is psychologist Dr. Randy Dellosa. Good morning, Dr. Randy.
Hello, good morning, Attorney Karen.
Hi.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Dr. Randy, so how would you define comprehensive sexuality education from a psychologist's perspective?
Yes, when we talk about comprehensive, it means that it should cover all aspects which are important for learning about human sexuality. So for instance, it should include anatomy, physiology, relationships, and even intimacy. So those are key topics, and it shouldn't only be comprehensive, no? The information that is transmitted should also be accurate and evidence-based, and also age-appropriate. Okay?
And age-appropriate, I think, would be one of the important considerations here, especially for parents. What would be age appropriate? So at what age, scientifically, should children be receiving sex education?
Yes, it's very important that I have to say now, not only children, but even adults need comprehensive sexual education. Okay? But you're asking when it starts, so it should start even in infancy. Okay?
Infancy?
Of course. Even if we can't teach them verbally, we know naman that much is caught rather than taught. So even as children, no, we're already absorbing, we're already imbibing our parents' values. And so sex education even starts from that age.
And for parents who are conservatives, like, what would be, I guess, like, syempre hindi nila pinag-uusapan to, di ba? So, what can they expect? So, if they allow their children to receive sex education at a young age, what can they expect from that? Of course, there's a difference between yung scientific base, pero syempre ang iniiwasan lagi would be yung what do you call this, yung scandalous naman, yung yeah, yung ano ba yung tamang word, not just, you know, masturbation, but you don't want them to be I'm trying to find the word.
Controversial.
Not controversial pero yung parang walang moral values ba, Dr. Randy?
Right. Well, first of all, the parents, no, and everyone naman has to be informed about what the CSE is really all about, and we have to dispel misconceptions. And perhaps the first misconception, no, which causes moral panic, is really about the misconception that it might cause or promote promiscuity.
Yun yung word na hinahanap ko. I was gonna say, actually, I didn't want to interrupt you, pero biglang pumasok sa isip ko, the word I was looking for was promiscuity. So how do we balance that? Syempre, if you're saying na based on scientific data, it's sex education should start even at infancy, but you don't want to raise promiscuous people. So how do you prevent that or balance those two?
How do we balance that? Of course, one thing that should be included, no, in the CSE is really dialogue with people who have experienced the negative side of their sexual experiences. You know, it's in dialogue and it's in testimony that people really listen rather than what's just taught. So it's important that there are discussions, open forums, you know, teaching platforms, and then people realize that this is not really about promoting promiscuity, but really about teaching what is accurate and evidence-based.
And Dr. Randy, is there evidence to show that early CSE can reduce instances of pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases?
Yes, there is a lot of findings, no, from research that it reduces teenage pregnancy rates, and it also improves sexual reproductive health, you know, and importantly, it also empowers the youth and the communities, and it also provides economic benefits. Okay, so it's not only about teaching about sex, and you know, there's this brouhaha about the word masturbation, but this is precisely what needs also to be discussed, you know, at the right age. This has to be discussed, and you know, dialogue has to be made on this topic.
And Dr. Randy, right now, this is one of the reasons why it became controversial, because even the word masturbation is very uncomfortable for a lot of Filipinos. Even for me, I find it uncomfortable to hear or say. So, what can you say about the Filipino culture? Are we a repressed culture, or how do we deal with you know, making, when we say, kasi nasa bill din naman talaga na making this sexual education culturally appropriate. So what are the unique aspects of the Filipino culture, and then what is really healthy in terms of receiving the right type of education?
Okay, right at this time, no, of course, the Philippines is still very conservative with regards to sexual values, you know, and of course it comes from our Catholicism and our religiosity. And because of our conservative cultural values and religious values, then there's still a lot of stigma and taboo surrounding sex, you know, and this is also fed by misinformation which parents have and which parents transmit, you know. And not only this, even at this time, no, there's very limited access to sexual education. So all of these compound, and it is a disservice to the generations, because if you're misinformed, then of course the teenage pregnancy rates rise.
So the inability to discuss this, do you think, can also be one of the causes for teenage pregnancy? In your opinion as a psychologist?
By not discussing these topics, by not having dialogues on these topics, then of course sexual pregnancy, the teenage pregnancy rates rise, and of course because of this contraceptive use decreases, and a lot of harmful gender norms are propagated. And so it's very important really that these are discussed.
And Dr. Randy, what is your personal stand on Senate Bill 1979?
I'm all for it. I feel that our legislators have to be guided by evidence, by research, rather than by personal opinion and bias.
Thank you so much.
Which may be misinformed.
Okay, so very important talaga yung having access to information, in your opinion, as a psychologist.
Yes. Especially now that the generations are changing, we have to adapt to what's happening because really culture is becoming global. And sooner or later, even at the young age, children are already getting exposed.
So it's better to get it from reliable sources.
Reliable sources, correct. And from a standardized program.
And Dr. Randy, sorry, lastly, this is part of Senate Bill 1979 that the education will come from the school. But what is your advice to parents? Should they also seek a psychologist to help their children in case they have their own reservations as to how much information is given to their children, and to customize siguro yung type of advice that can be given to their children?
Yes, correct. Remember that the generations, the values of the previous generations, though, including ours, will be considered outdated by the current generations. So we have tayo, who are older, we have also to be informed about what's happening. And somehow we have to find some dialogue, some balance, some harmony between what we perceive to be taboos and what seems to be acceptable by the new generations now. So even we have to learn and we have to adapt, and find a balance if we feel that we don't want to compromise our own values.
Thank you so much, Dr. Randy Dellosa.
Thank you.
And coming back here to the studio, Attorney Jess, so DepEd claims that it has been integrating CSE
since 2018.
Since 2018. So, to what extent does this bill not become redundant with that? Meron bang babaguhin dun sa CSE sa curriculum right now?
Well, again, the DepEd sex education right now is only hinahango or flows from the RH law and from the anti-HIV law. So, madami pang kulang doon sa sex education na meron tayo ngayon. Because again, we have this pressing problem, which is the problem of teenage pregnancy. So, this bill is not actually a sex education bill. It is an anti-teenage pregnancy bill. It focuses on that, and then it just says on the aside na to prevent teenage pregnancy, one primary tool is comprehensive sexuality education and focusing on the adolescents who are undergoing puberty, who are undergoing peer pressure, who might be fooled, who might be gaslighted, who might be exploited by guys or even their female friends na, oh, okay lang yung sex, mag-sex ka na. On the point kasi kanina, Attorney Karen, medyo may na-mention lang kanina about promiscuity. Actually, when you teach sex education, people become less promiscuous.
Why is that the case?
It's a fact na the more that young people learn about their bodies and they know what is sex, what is menstruation, what is virginity, what is the first time, if it's also painful, not just pleasurable, they become averse to it. they think, the myth has been dispelled. Because the reason why they will engage in early sex is because it's a mystical thing na hindi pa na-demystify. Medyo, wow, what's that? May curiosity. And it's a cool thing. Masarap daw. Wala namang tinuturo na it's also painful. It's actually also very painful the first time. It's also actually very awkward. It's also very bloody. I mean, we're in an adult show, right? So most adults watching this would know already that the first time is not necessarily something magical. But kids don't know that.
But
teenagers don't know
something that is also evident in the bill is that this is not just exclusive to girls. So
It's also
is gender
for boys.
neutral.
Yes.
So in that case, based on CSE, how can this teach also boys to be responsible?
Because boys-
when you're saying a gaslighting, it's mostly kind of like the responsibility or the acts of the men in this case, the boys.
Usually.
Usually. So, and they're the ones that cause the pregnancy, right? So
It takes two to tango.
So how can this also prevent that teenage or adolescent pregnancy from the side of the men and boys?
Sex education teaches boundaries. It teaches about consent. That you can't just take what you want because it's pleasurable. Because it's a fact. There are rape cases and child rape and teenager rape by incestuous fathers. Unfortunately, that's a reality. By boyfriends who think that it's their right to have sex with their girlfriends, and their girlfriends will just go along with it. Sex education teaches you about boundaries, that you need consent. You need to ask.
Do you think the current laws don't have any effect on that? Like we do have laws on statutory rape and sexual harassment that would be in the form of a workplace context or school context. But you don't think there are any existing laws that could address that problem?
Well, I mean, if you just visit any public school, if you just visit any DepEd school, and most private schools that we know, a lot of this are not taught, sex education-wise. Even if we have anti-rape, even if we have anti-sexual harassment, a lot of teachers are also, some of them are predators. So the idea of boundaries, and I'm not saying that, they're teaching sex education, and I'm saying teachers are the predators, right? It's different who teaches the sex education. Right? There's going to be a specific teacher for sex ed. It's not necessarily all teachers. So what am I saying here? If we're teaching the kids already that there are boundaries, that they can say no. They can say no to their teacher, who might be a predator. They can say no to their father, or they can know who to report. They will now be able to know that they can go to their barangay, report that they were harassed, report that they were touched. Just to go back a bit to what Professor Randy Dellosa a while ago said about infancy, right? When he said teaching CSE at infancy, it's obviously to the adults. So at 0 to 4,
okay.
yeah, definitely
Thanks
it's
for
not
clarifying
the kids.
that.
It's
Kasi
not
hindi
the
ko
kids, right?
natanong din, pero medyo nagulat ako.
No, he was
saying, so scientifically yung bata. Okay, so
he was
that's
saying
good that
kasi
you
a lot
clarified.
of sex education is not really taught verbally. It's more by role modeling. It's by what is caught by the kid just by watching their parents, right?
Oh, that's why he was saying most of what they learn is taught, not it's
caught,
not taught.
not taught. And a lot of that is about boundaries. It's parents first who will say what is an appropriate way to touch and what is an inappropriate way to touch. Because if the parents themselves are violative, they will learn the wrong idea.
And okay, so lastly, where do you see this bill going? Do you think it would have a chance to be passed in the 20th Congress? I don't think there's enough time in the current 19th Congress.
I think under PBBM, if he is not dispelled of the fake news, if he doesn't get to talk to Secretary Sani Angara, then it's gonna languish. It's like RH bill all over again. It's the great debate of 2012.
Did it take for the RH bill to get passed? Would you know?
Very, very long. Decades.
Decades?
Yes.
Decades? Okay.
Yes.
So are we expecting decades here?
Well, Project Dellosa and the conservative movement that is behind that alarmist video seems to be a very strong organized force. But obviously, the human rights advocates and those who are pro-sex education are also here to try to dispel those kind of myths.
So at least people can decide with full information.
Yes, they can read the bill themselves. They can trust Secretary Sunny Angara and the DepEd whether they will implement this properly or not.
So I will end on this question. Can parents opt out? So let's say their kids go to public school and private schools and they say, we just want to opt out. We don't want our kids to go to that specific class.
That's going to be controversial because my answer here will be they should not be able to opt out because there are some things in life that parents can't opt out in terms of educating their kids, which is, for example, vaccines. For example, basic fundamental human rights. Can they opt out of those other controversial things if they're like anti-vaxxer? I don't think so. This is an information that is necessary for the child to chart their future. Again, parents, we love our kids and parents have parental authority. I'm not stepping on that. But they are only stewards of the future life of the kid. At the end of the day, it's the kid who will suffer or benefit from their information.
Thank you so much, Attorney Jess. Very
Thank you,
well
Attorney
said.
Karen.
So we'll have to end on that note because we don't have any more time. Thank you for
Sayang.
being here today. Oh, but thank you so much. We learned a lot. The anti-teen pregnancy bill has stirred up conversations on when should sex education be imparted to Filipino children and teens. The intention behind Senate Bill 1979 is noble. In fact, it was unanimously approved in the lower house in 2023. Without the benefit of interpolation, it is currently being politicized. What is clear is that there is a need for the law to be passed, and Senate should study, discuss, and give time to Senate Bill 1979. Be timely informed, be insightful of the news. Always stay at the forefront. Join us again tomorrow for meaningful conversations that would help you form an objective personal opinion. This is Attorney Karen Jimeno. Thank you for spending your hour with us.